Hi everybody, happy Easter on this Easter Sunday. It's great to be with you, celebrating the goodness and grace and joy of God. I want to thank everybody who's been involved in putting together the service today. We really appreciate all your hard work. It's always great when something happens in your life that's unexpected, that you're not expecting, and it's something that's really good and something really positive. Something you always kind of wanted to happen and didn't expect that it would happen. And I guess that's what it was like for the disciples. The resurrection of Jesus is the most amazing thing that has ever happened. And it was the kind of thing that they never expected to happen. So the resurrection is almost like D-Day, the beginning of the end really, as God comes and gives his great commission to his disciples. I think I came up with 8 Ds that probably applied to them. There's like death replaced by life, clearly. Jesus had died, they knew about it, they'd seen it, and when Jesus stands before them, he still has the wounds to prove it, and so all of a sudden out of death there comes life. There's depression followed by joy. Those of you who've ever lost a loved one can know the depth of the anguish, and the difficulty and the pain and the loss, this sense that you're never ever going to see the person as part of this life again, and how that can cause you to spiral into sorrow and sometimes depression. Well, in an instant all of that was gone. In an instant all of that was taken care of, and all of a sudden there is great joy in these disciples' lives. There was despair replaced by hope when they saw Jesus die on the cross. All of their dreams they felt had died with him. All of the things that they'd given up in the past to follow him had come to an end. And there was no thought of the future. There was no thought of what the future might be. But all of that changed on Resurrection Day, when Jesus was raised from the dead. All of a sudden there is hope, there is newness, there is life, there is hope for the future. There's disillusionment replaced by direction. They had followed Jesus, they'd given up everything to follow Jesus. They had a new purpose, a new sense of what could be in following Jesus. But all of that had come to an end at the cross. And so they found themselves disillusioned and hiding in fear of the Jews and the Jewish authorities. But all of that changes when Jesus is risen from the dead. Jesus comes and gives them a new commission and says, this is your direction in future when you go into all the world and preach the gospel. There's darkness replaced by light, the terrible darkness of bereavement and pain and difficulty. All of a sudden the light of Jesus shines on these men. All of a sudden they can see things as they never saw them before. The darkness is gone. They look back and they see things in Jesus' life that he said, and all of it becomes clear. They learn about the transfiguration and the importance and significance of the transfiguration. Detachment is replaced by unity. Sin has detached them from God and from one another. Now all of a sudden Jesus brings this group together. Jesus uses this group of people in unity of purpose to go and share the gospel of Jesus. Desertion is replaced by commitment. Those moments where they were frightened and they ran away and they deserted Jesus. It wasn't just Peter who said, we'll follow you to the end. All of the disciples said that. But none of them were there. And so they deserted him. And yet with the resurrection, all of that changes. Never will they ever desert Jesus again. It's replaced by commitment. It's replaced by sacrifice. It's replaced for many of them by martyrdom. And so defeat is replaced by victory. This is the beginning of the victory of Jesus and the beginning of this great mission to reach the world, to involve you and I, to share the love of Christ. And so there are reasons, all of those are reasons to celebrate today, but I want to bring us back to another 4 things that God says to us on this Resurrection Day. This is D-Day, but God, through D-Day, says a number of really, really important things to us. He says, first of all, we are his prized possession. That's what the resurrection tells us. We are God's prized possession. Remember, last week Tim talked about the importance of believing in Jesus, the importance of having that real sense of faith, the importance of trusting Jesus. And the reality is that when we come into that relationship with him, the resurrection speaks to us about the fact that we are his prized possession. When Jesus came and stood before his disciples, he doesn't abandon them. He doesn't rebuke them for running away. He comes to encourage them, and he comes to love them, and he comes to build them up. And the cross and the resurrection speak to us about the fact that we are forever his prized possession. In the Old Testament, you remember, God had that small group of people that he called his remnant. It was the faithful group. It was the group that would stick it out to the end. It was the group that he'd set his heart on. It's a reflection of his heart in choosing his own people. Do you ever remember going to maybe your grandparents, and somewhere in your grandparents' house they had something that was really, really special to them? It was almost like their prized possession, and I guess all of us have got things like that in our lives, things that we look upon as our own special possession, things that we protect, things that we take care of, things that we boast about and say, come and look at this, I want to show you something, things that get our attention. Well, God says that of you and me. Pretty amazing, folks. Because of the resurrection, you are highly valued by God. You are his cherished and prized possession. 1 Peter 2 says, you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession. And maybe some of us need to take that on board this morning. Maybe wherever you are this morning, you don't kind of feel like that. Maybe you doubt yourself. Maybe you undervalue yourself. Maybe you don't see yourself as being significant. Well, on this resurrection day, hear a different message. The message that says you're important, you're special. I came to die for you, I came to rise for you. You're my special possession. You don't have to look down on yourself this morning. So we are his prized possession forever. We are also forever his understood children. That this God fully understands us. There's nothing worse than trying to make yourself understood, trying to get people to understand what you're saying. And many years ago, Karen and I went to visit her aunt and uncle in New York. Her aunt was Italian and she belonged to a big Italian family. And we went there for lunch one day. And it was an incredible experience because they gave us this pasta, and Karen and I were whiffing it down. And at the end of it, I said, oh, thank you very much for that. That was absolutely gorgeous. And then Karen's aunt told me that was just a starter, and we couldn't believe it. But Karen's aunt's parents couldn't speak English. They could only speak Italian. And it was very interesting. We were trying to share with them what my father did for a living, and that he made and repaired whiskey barrels. And the really funny thing was that Karen seemed to come up with this idea that if you add EO onto every word, all of a sudden it makes it Italian. So she sat there saying to them, yeah, Barellio, Himeko Barellio. And I was on the floor laughing, and Karen's aunt's parents just looked at her as if she had horns. Sometimes it can be frustrating when you're not getting through. Sometimes it can be frustrating when people don't understand. And yet the opposite is true to that. There is nothing nicer than coming to someone and offloading, and you find here is someone who understands. Here is someone who recognises who I am. Here is someone who acknowledges what I'm going through. And the resurrection proclaims that we come to a God who understands. He understands us as our creator. Remember, Jesus said that he was involved in the beginning. Through him all things were made. You know, there's a huge difference between me looking at a watch and a watchmaker looking at a watch. The watchmaker understands how it's been formed. He understands all the different bits that have been put together. He understands why maybe some things have gone wrong, whereas I don't understand any of that. And when we come to God, he understands us fully because he's our creator. He understands us because he's put us together. We read in Psalm 139, you know, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And so he doesn't just understand us as our creator. What's even greater is he understands us as our redeemer. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And that's pretty amazing. I'm not telling us anything we don't know this morning, but Jesus understands us. Here was the one who knew what it was to thirst. Here was the one who knew what it was to be tired and weary. Here was the one who understood what it was to be frustrated and upset. Here was the son, someone, as we saw on Friday, who went through terrible anguish and the valley of decision that he had to make. Here is the one who understands fully our suffering and our difficulty. Here is the one who understands our loneliness and isolation even today. And so we worship him for that. He lived the life as we do. And he comes and understands us in our present condition. So here is one who has forever understood us as his children, and we can thank him for that. One who has understood us, and we are forever his prized possession. Thirdly, we are forever his unfinished creation. One of the things I've noticed about being in isolation is everybody's out there doing the jobs that were unfinished. You know, the jobs that were put off for ages and ages, we're now trying to finish them off. It's like that a bit with jigsaws. You know, some people do jigsaws and they do a little bit and they go away and they leave it unfinished and then they come back later on. Well, because of the resurrection, the disciples didn't become perfect overnight. God had more work for them. God had more things for them to do, and that was true with all of them. With Peter, in terms of where he had been and needed to go. For Paul, I mean, God came into his life and then began a work and where he had to go. But here's the thing, God is committed to finishing his work. God is committed to bringing about his purpose. And the resurrection means that today God will commit himself to fulfill and finish the jigsaw part that needs to be done in our lives. Philippians 1 says, he who began a good work within you will carry it on to the day of completion. How encouraging is that? This resurrection day. That God is committed to maturing us, that God is committed to helping us to grow, that God is committing us to become all that he wants us to be. What an assurance that is. If God is for us, who can be against us? God is for us to work and to act according to his good purpose. And that's really great and a great thing to celebrate today. And so finally, today, we are forever his unique instruments. The resurrection means that God has a plan and purpose, not just for the disciples, but for you and me. God wants to use us as instruments of his heart, of his love, of his grace. We are not saved just for the sake of it. We're saved because God has a work for us to do. And that means that we've not to sit back, but rather we're to give ourselves fully. We are the instruments of God, and that's been pretty tough these last few weeks, being isolated. We're finding new ways to be instruments of God's love and care, and we're really grateful to everybody who's been demonstrating that to our community through Food Bank, through delivering food, and keeping in touch with emails and FaceTime and all that different stuff. Here's the thing again, we have the same purpose, but we have different gifts. There is that unity of purpose to make him known, to share him, but we have the different gifts to make that happen. You know, Peter and Paul were different, they reached different people. At one point Paul said, I'll become all things to all men. Different gifts, and let's thank God again on this resurrection day that he has given us gifts, that he has made us his instrument, that he has created us for the purpose that he wants us to fulfill. So I encourage you to celebrate today in your quiet time, in those moments where you're alone with God. You know, just thank him. God, we thank you that you are risen. Christ is risen. We are forever his prized possession. Christ is risen. We are forever his understood children. Christ is risen. We are forever his unfinished creation. Christ is risen. We are forever his unique instruments. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Amen. Let's worship together as we celebrate his goodness.